Hello, it's Gina Gardner here, and I'm joined by my very good friend, Rachel Davidson. Both of us are international best-selling authors, and today we want to talk to you about the theme of sacrifice. And it seems very fitting on the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landing that we talk about sacrifice. But actually, I'd like to talk about it in the terms of the macro, the big sacrifice, which ultimately boils down to each person's individual sacrifice, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But also the sacrifices that people make because they believe they're doing right, but in doing so, they stop themselves from living their dream. Mm-hmm. So I was watching the news this morning. It was talking about the D-Day landing, and it's quite incomprehensible at one level for people of our generation and beyond, to recognise how the whole country, the whole world was, had the feeling that the sacrifice of the individual, and they gave it apparently very freely from the conversations that were held this morning in the news with the survivors, even though they're now in their 90s and 100s, that they recognise that they may have to live their life in order to sacrifice to the greater good. Yes. And, I think it's very hard for us to recognise how strong that feeling was, that the forces that were working were so big and so black and dark, yes, that people needed to come together to fight it at whatever the cost.
Yeah, the word sacrifice is quite an interesting one.
Yeah,
and obviously it has a lot of religious connotation. In fact, it comes from the Latin "sacre," if I'm pronouncing that correct, which is holy.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of, the whole word is based around a sense of God or a higher being, yes, whatever. And obviously, sacrifices were in many religions necessary to please the gods. And that's all about that. Going back many, to almost primitive times. Nowadays, we wouldn't think that we had to sacrifice in order to please a god. But there is still that innate sense within humanity that in order to pay homage to a higher power, yes, the thing that is bigger than us, you have to do a sacrifice, which is fundamentally, animal and child sacrifices and all these things were essentially down to a group, a tribe, giving up what was most valuable,
their most precious thing, which would be
their to the gods, as in homage to them and so on. And that's really where what the word still resonates with, isn't it? What greater sacrifice than to give of your own life for a continuing society that you're no longer going to be part of, well, not until you return to this earth, in my view. So the ultimate sacrifice of going into battle, facing great horrors, yes, knowing that the odds were stacked against you. It is inconceivable in sort of, the safe world that we now live in. I know there's lots of bad news and stories and stuff, but, we haven't yet got World War III. No. We are not actually about to do another D-Day landing anytime soon.
Don't you find it interesting? The whole business of sacrifice, yes, people gave their precious children, their animals. Interestingly, in those situations, the sacrifice itself perhaps did not go willingly or knowingly. They didn't have an active choice. And, I suppose at one level, neither did the people going into the D-Day landing, in the sense that they were part of the military, and that if they didn't go, there would have been significant consequences. I think, for me, what I find interesting is one gets the sense, and that's all you can do because you're talking about the very few who are now reporting on it. But talking to my dad, who was in Africa during the war, he volunteered. He signed up long before conscription because he believed in the rightness of working against the fascist rule, and that he wanted to protect the future from that sort of regime. But I find it quite interesting, this huge paradox in that we venerate the people who went through the D-Day landing and fought for our freedom.
Yeah.
But there are people whose belief in terms of terrorism is that they are fighting for their version of freedom and they are sacrificing their life. And we do the very opposite of venerate them. But I think I'd like to sort of keep the theme to not the right or wrongs of what people are fighting for, but the very act that something that people believe in, that they are prepared to make that sacrifice, to actually work against their own personal safety, for example, in order to protect those that they love and those they don't know, but in that sense of there is a rightness to what they're doing.
Well, there was a case recently in the I've forgotten the technical word for what they do when they review and go through death of the London Bridge terrorist attack.
Yes.
So sorry, again, I'm raising a terrorist act, but within that there were sacrifices made. And there's one particular chap who saw the attack beginning and intervened to protect other people and ended up dying himself.
Yes.
He was,
but look at firefighters, for example. They're going into the Grenfell Tower.
And all soldiers, and
and there are people who put themselves in the front line on a day-by-day basis in order to serve us. I mean, I was watching a programme about the ambulance service, for example, and one would think that people who are in the medical service would be immune from attack because their only purpose is to actually help other people. And yet, in this programme, there was a situation where they had been told that somebody had been stabbed. They weren't sure if the attacker was there, but the person who'd phoned in was a child of 11. And the ambulance driver was told to wait until there was backup. And he said, I can't leave an 11-year-old child in that situation. I'll be careful and I'll withdraw if necessary, but I'm going in. And, on a daily basis, there are sacrifices being made, and I'm going to sort of the macro sacrifices, if you like, where there is a grand, I don't mean it in the sense of that it's a wasted gesture, but it's a big gesture. It's something out of the person's ordinary day-to-day life.
And I think that is what defines whether we venerate or not a sacrifice. Yeah. Because it is about the why, and it is about the intention that is behind it.
Yes.
So although we don't want to get into specifics around beliefs and whether it's fundamentalism and whether sacrifice for that cause is good versus sacrifice for that cause, but it has to be said that if you ignore the reason why a sacrifice is being done, then you are not able to judge it for the quality of its intention.
No.
Because there are sacrifices that are going on, on a daily basis. It's a well-known, oft-stated thing that women often sacrifice their own self-care for the sake of, the family and all the other to-dos that are on their list. And that's quite a trivial one in comparison to the sacrifice that we started talking about, the D-Day landings. But nevertheless, it is a sacrifice that it will affect the quality of a person's life.
And it's a good segue into where I'd like this conversation to go now, which is the daily sacrifices that we make for other people, or because we believe that other people want something different of us, and so we sacrifice our dreams, our aspirations, our quality of life in order to either please or appease others. And I think although the outcome might be the same, I think there's a difference between wanting to please and wanting to appease people. And I just wonder, for people who are listening to this live, and lovely to see those that joined us for live, thank you very much. So hi. But on a daily basis, many people are sacrificing their health,
Mm-hmm.
their quality of life,
Mm-hmm.
their soul satisfaction and growth,
Yep.
in order to please others or appease others.
Mm.
And I think that's a sacrifice that we need to really challenge.
Mm.
You know, is it more important that I please you
Mm-hmm.
than I actually do something that is right for me?
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems is the language that you use around this. And you please yourself.
Mm.
And if you're pleasing yourself, that's deemed to be very selfish, rather than to be somebody who is caring and thoughtful of other people.
Mm.
But I keep going back to, and I have to say, this is a work in motion for me.
Mm.
You know, are the needs of other people more important than one's own needs? Self-care, which I talk about a lot, you know, putting one's needs first is important, and yet we have been brought up, many of us, to believe that when we do something for other people, it has a value that is greater than if we do something for ourselves, and that there's a danger that we are self-centered, selfish, narcissistic if we are dealing with ourselves first and other people next. And that's sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice in terms of the potential other that it could become. The problem with that is it dumbs us down, it keeps us small, it gives us a sense of dis-ease, which then very often will translate further along the line into disease.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it sort of systemizes a life that is, in reality and by necessity, full of subtleties and details and nuances. Whether you are right to make a sacrifice, whether you martyr yourself, that's another word that gets used in these kind of scenarios, whether that is ultimately, you know, for the higher good of yourself and those that you were intending the sacrifice to benefit. It's all in the detail, isn't it? The understanding.
The context is so important, isn't it?
It's absolutely important, because, you know, I know of a lot of people who've grown up with their mothers acting as total martyrs to, you know, totally putting off their own life and making themselves small in that sense in order to fulfill. And the children from that kind of upbringing can often feel that, you know, why did my mum have to martyr herself? And you know, so it often can produce a counterproductive,
or produces young people who believe that the world owes them a living, and
the world will martyr themselves for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, I think, generally speaking, I think if you're being extreme and on any end of the spectrum, then it's not going to end up with a very good result, because extreme behaviour that isn't balanced.
But define extreme.
Well,
because
again,
one person's
you know,
extreme
context,
is another person's normal.
Yeah, occasionally saying, I mean, I did it last Sunday. I really wanted a day in the garden doing what I wanted to do, but my daughter wanted to be ferried around. We talked about options that might be possible, just they weren't. So, you know, it was my sacrifice. I had to sacrifice my time in order to give her the day that she wanted. But if I do that once, that's fine. If I am constantly putting off my needs to just furnish her requirements, that begins to feel unbalanced and extreme.
I think the balance, the fairness has to come in.
Yeah.
For me, I think, you know, that I work with so many people where their sense of self-worth is absolutely dependent upon doing things for other people. I have no value unless I am sacrificing my needs, my wants, my aspirations in order to service other people's perceived needs, because often it is just a perception.
Well, people will describe a want as a need, won't they?
Yes. You've only got to talk to any child, you know, You know, I've got to have it. Everybody else in the world.
Well, that was my daughter's view, that she definitely needed to be somewhere. And
yes.
No, you want to be there, but you don't need to be there, do you?
But I think,
debatable.
For me, the sacrifice bit is very much about what's going on in people's head and heart. It's about the intention. It's about, because I actually, as those people who've listened to me before will recognise, that I believe that certainly my sole purpose is around service. And that gives me great joy. But there are times when I get the balance wrong, and that I put other people's needs first and find I'm burning the midnight oil, or you know, that I'm not taking care of myself in the way that I should. I am better than I used to be, but I think there's still, as I said, work in progress. But so I recognise people's desire to help and to support other people. But I think the old adage, you know, from the airplanes, put your oxygen on first, makes a lot of sense. That actually, if you are filling yourself up first, you have more to give other people. And then it's not a sacrifice. It's a service. And for me, there's a big distinction between being of service and sacrificing when we're talking about the day-to-day stuff. Very different when we're talking about the D-Day landing, when you are being of service and it's a huge sacrifice. Or potential sacrifice, because you know that you're going into a life or death situation and you may not come back. But for most of us, those day-to-day little decisions, those choices that we make, moment by moment, day by day, don't have to lead us to a place of life or death sacrifice, or even the death of a quality of life, the death of our dreams. So for those mums who've made the decision to have children, and with that comes a responsibility, it's recognising that actually teaching your children to have a level of independence, to be able to do things for themselves, means that you will be able to then resume your dream in a way that if you teach your children to use you as a doormat, as a victim, then you will be stuck in that place for a very long time. And moreover, if you're a victim and a doormat in that context, it's likely to spill over into every area of your life.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, I think going back to those sort of old religious beliefs around you must honour the God by giving up what is most valuable to you, like with most things, there's a seed of truth in that, but I think the reality is less bloody. I think that what you have to do is that you have to consider why something is so important to you, and where that is coming from, and therefore what quality does it lend to your higher self and to humanity's higher self in order to give it up.
The sacrifice.
That's an intelligent.
Yes.
Intelligent sacrifice in that sense. But sacrificing for something that is self-feeding.
Yes.
Trying to choose my words carefully there. I was nearly going to go self-fulfilling, but actually I wanted something that was a little bit more on that sort of, you know, needy side of things. I just don't think it benefits.
Well, you have to consider, you know, if you're sacrificing being the genuine person that you are, you're sacrificing your potential in order to satisfy a perceived view that you're enabling somebody else's potential. I think it's based on a skewed perception.
Yeah. So lots of examples of people who give away their power on a regular basis, and then a sort of act slightly surprised to be, you know, bobbing along on a tide that was not of their choosing.
I mean, we've talked a lot about that your own emotional, spiritual, physical well-being is your responsibility unless you're very small. I don't mean in stature, I mean in age.
Yeah.
And yet so many people sacrifice their own emotional well-being in order to go back to how we started, to appease or to help somebody else feel better. And it's not your responsibility.
No.
Your responsibility is your emotional well-being, and that's your choice. And your feeling bad should not be part of the equation of making somebody else feel better.
No, because and then we start to bleed into the sort of laws around abundance and a mentality of lack or scarcity. And if you operate from a point of lack or scarcity, then you might begin to believe that you have to sacrifice your whatever in order to feel their whatever. But if you believe in abundance and a generous universe, then you can find ways in which both parties don't have to do that negative giving up. And in that sense, the sacrifice becomes an act of generosity. So if you use the word generosity,
rather than sacrifice,
it has so much more of a positive, life-affirming type of feel about it, doesn't it?
Generosity gives to both parties. Yeah. Sacrifice means that somebody is losing something. So I think, I want to make it absolutely clear, I have huge admiration and respect for those people who put their lives on the line for something, in order to protect us, in order to go for the greater good.
Well, the fact that they were willing to put themselves into that danger was a huge act of generosity, wasn't it?
I would say so. And they paid the ultimate price for that generosity, but they did it with good heart. That's not to say that they were not terrified. But they're certainly what came across this morning in listening to those people who had survived, that, as I said, they're in their 90s and their 100s, who said, we didn't know what was going to happen, we didn't know where we were going, but we knew it was important and we were prepared to go and give our all. And thousands of them did.
So again, we come back to the point that the act of sacrifice
is giving.
It is, and it is only in the intention behind it, the detail behind it, the context and the subtlety that then informs that sacrifice as to whether it will go on to live in history as a great act, or it'll go on to live in history as a stupid act that
served no purpose,
belittled everybody in the end. Yeah.
And what I would say to everybody who's listening to this, whether it's a live program or whether you're listening to that, just think about on a daily basis, how often do you act in a generous way, a way that actually gives to you and to the other? And I'm not talking about finances here, I'm talking about of yourself. And how often do you sacrifice yourself in order to appease or appeal to somebody else? And I would urge you to really think about the intention behind that, because if you're sacrificing who you are, if you're making yourself small, if you are constantly trying to help other people feel good, being frightened that if you say or do something, the other person's going to be grumpy or aggressive or difficult, then that takes it into, I would suggest, the realm of a negative sacrifice, one which doesn't do you any good, and it certainly doesn't do the person on the receiving end of that any good. Sacrifice on a daily basis, within normal daily life, not within huge emergency situations, is about, if you're being genuinely you and you're stepping into your power, it's about you having your power, and in doing that both you and the other party are powerful. There does not have to be one person who is lesser, diminished, in order for the other party to feel powerful. Genuine power is about, because I'm standing in my power or sitting in my power, I enable you to sit in your power too. It's almost about the tacit permission that we give each other to be our best selves.
Yeah.
And anything less is an empty sacrifice, I would suggest.
I agree, yes.
So my thanks, my prayers to all of those people who over the eons have sacrificed to keep us safe, to keep us well. But I would urge all of you to review how you're behaving on a day-by-day basis within your day-to-day life, and think about, are they generous acts which build and grow all parties, or are you sacrificing? And if you are, then perhaps it's time to do something about it. So thanks for joining us, and I'd be really grateful if you would let us know what you think. You know, where are the areas in your life where you feel that you are sacrificing something of yourself? Where have you experienced somebody giving that incredibly generous act to do something that has made a huge difference to your life? Because I think being grateful to those people is really important. You can find lots more of our genuine chats on the website, which is genuinely, then the hyphen and the word you.com. That's genuinely-you.com. You can find the new TV series. You'll find both our books, Rachel's The Point of Me, and mine, the Thriving Not Surviving, the 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfillment. So we'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care, and please comment and let us know what you think. Lovely to see you. Bye-bye now.